I'm going to introduce Terry Guiel, who is going to introduce the panel, and he's going to be the moderator and the gavel. And I just want to give a brief intro. I don't know if you know, Terry Guiel is the head of the DBIA and also a musician, but at one point in his life he was a councillor at City Hall and held the arts and cultural portfolio and made some really good changes to support the arts and to have the arts voice heard. And so that's why organizations like us can exist today. Anyway, here's Terry.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I am very honored to be here, to be asked to do this. And as anybody who knows Sue did, you can't say no to Sue did. So it's a shame that she's not here tonight. She is a wonderful, wonderful champion of the arts community. And she, my time on council, and I'm understanding my time with the DBIA now, she is the type, she's the type of wonderful conduit for the arts to other organizations that you all know about. So hats off to Sue. Too bad she couldn't make it tonight, but on we go. We have such an amazing group of creative and experienced people in this room, and so I'm looking forward to hearing what comes out of this room in this discussion today with this incredible panel of people that I'm hoping, I know Bill very well, but the others I'm hoping to know a lot more tonight in the future as we discuss some of these important topics. You know, we talk about spaces, and you know, it was probably the first or second week on the job. I was researching other communities, what they do with their arts. And one of the things that popped out was a community, if I say it right, Chemainus. It's about an hour from BC. And they were going bankrupt. They were losing all their businesses. Their main factory shut down. And slowly, slowly, businesses were closing. And they decided to do something bold and grand. And they got together and said, why don't we make us the mural capital of Canada? And they aggressively pursued something together as a community, as a council, and as a downtown. And they became the mural capital of Canada. And art is everywhere there. And it started to bring people back. Businesses started to open again. And they started building a whole new tourism just on that alone. And so I was walking around, I was looking at all these blank canvases. And we do have some examples of some wonderful murals and that. But it's something that I'd like to pursue, and hopefully I talked to several people in here about how we could probably pursue that. We have some incredible blank canvases, and so we started scratching the surface at City Hall about seeing how we could pursue putting some art, big and grand canvas style. So tonight we're going to hear from 5 incredibly talented, gifted, and experienced people in an area that we all care about and are passionate about. But they will all have 10 minutes to discuss the topics, and then at the end of it, we'll open it up for everybody to have conversations. How does that sound? Good. So, our first speaker tonight is Natalie Napier. Now, Natalie has worked in the community economic development and social enterprise sector for almost 10 years. She currently manages Ptbo, a coined social enterprise that provides a co-working space and community site for social enterprise and innovation initiatives. She also teaches community economic development at Trent University. Natalie believes resource sharing goes beyond economizing and reducing waste to laying the basis for tighter knit, more functional communities. We've asked Natalie to talk a bit about the overall needs of not-for-profits. Natalie?
Is that what I'm talking about?
Whatever you want to talk about.
That's what I'll do then, okay. Thank you, Terry. Well, I will talk about what I want to talk about then. So I'll start with talking about Ptbo, which is how I came to be so interested in shared spaces, creative spaces. So Hatch Peterborough is a social enterprise, which according to the province of Ontario is an organization that uses market mechanisms to achieve some kind of social impact. Or according to Social Enterprise Canada, it's a non-profit that owns a business that sells goods and services. So the goods and services we sell are around shared office space. So we are a co-working space. And you can come in and you can have a membership for as low as $25 a month, and you sit down at a desk, choose any desk, and you have access to Wi-Fi, and you have access to a range of office equipment, and a kitchen, and free coffee and tea, and there's meeting rooms, and did I say Wi-Fi? And then you also have coworkers, which for people who work from home normally can be a nice thing once a month or a little more often. And then we have full-time people who have their own office space that in theory only they can touch, and they have everything set up there for themselves. And so we have different kinds of members. And our goal is to have, we have nonprofit members, we have for-profit startups, they're multi-small organizations, and we have individuals who do freelancing. And we look for as much diversity as possible in the kind of people that we have in our space. So we are, as a social enterprise, our goal is not just to run a co-working space. Even if our space fills up and it does very well in that capacity, we will still be a failure if we do not do well at our social goal, which is about providing a community for social innovation. So trying to create some of the conditions in which we think social innovation is more likely to happen. And the Hatch Peterborough was the result of a number of community members' work, among them Bill Kimball over here. So community members heard Eli McKinsey, who's a co-founder of the Centers for Social Innovation in Toronto, come speak in Peterborough when there was just one Center for Social Innovation in Toronto. And look at this, I put on my timer and then I start. Thanks, Harry, coming back. So Eli came to speak about what was going on at the Centre for Social Innovation in Toronto, which many of you may have heard about since then. It's got quite a bit of clout. And they were really impressed by what was going on. And it wasn't so much the idea of renting out space, it was that the Centre for Social Innovation, which we'll call CSI from now on, was trying to create conditions in which people will be more socially innovative. And their theory about how to do that was to create an appealing and attractive space that was, it had flexible enough memberships that different kinds of people could access it, organizations and individuals, and then to try and get different kinds of people who do completely different kinds of work into the space. And then it was kind of a light touch, it was sort of stir gently. So you put on some not too structured events, and you provide a forum in which other people could plan their own events and invite people to it. And you'd have lots of open concept areas where people could work alongside each other, and maybe they would start talking, and that was the hope. Because they thought when people are working on problems, if they've built friendly and trusting relationships with people who do different kinds of work, who approach problems in different ways, and then they talk about those things they're working on together, they're going to have way more tools to come up with an interesting solution. So the other ingredient is that all these people have to have some kind of interest in making a positive social change in the world. And maybe they don't know exactly what that's going to look like for them, and they haven't, they're at different stages, but they're all interested in that. So that's what inspired this group, and they worked away for a couple of years, and not to minimize that, now we have a space. The way that the space works at this point, we're less than a year old, but already I can see that, first of all, it's creating new relationships for people. It's great. We have both our organization and other organizations in the space sometimes have interns, and I've noticed that those interns seem to get tons of work because they're hanging out, they're working at their desk, and other people come along and want to hire them to do little jobs, and then they see that they do well with little jobs, and then they hire them for other stuff. So that's worked really well. And we have seen some people collaborating on projects. And I hope that we'll see more people who are, applying for a proposal and think, we could use someone who has some web development skills on this. Hey, it will probably be Mortimer or Lilo over there because we've worked with them and, they seem to know what they're doing. And so form new relationships. And so I thought a lot, we've looked at I've looked a lot at different ways for sharing spaces in this process and what is important when you're trying to start a shared space. So I had some thoughts on that. So I guess there's two approaches, main approaches, which would be like a few artists in every building versus an under one roof model. And I think the under one roof model is really appealing. I think people get very excited about that. I get very excited about that. But I've come to think that the few artists in every building is maybe a more strategic place to start. And that some of the reasons I have around that are, first of all, I think it doesn't ghettoize artists, and it creates opportunities for artists to create relationships outside of their sector. And those can be great allies when you want to get something done. It means sometimes more exposure for art, but also more exposure to art for people who are not part of the art sector. It can allow us to make great use of existing buildings. So, this could be a situation in which an engineering firm has some underused rooms in their building, and so they rent them out for a certain amount of time per week or full time, and they could be sharing space with artists. And there's lots of buildings that have underused space in them, boardrooms that are underused space. I understand that Ray Marshall has suggested that bands could be perhaps rehearsing here when there's not other programming on, which sounds like a great opportunity for bands. But I think we need to be making maybe an inventory of all of the space assets that we have within, I don't know what geographical bounds, and right down to even not full day periods that they're available, and see if we can improve the way that we use them. And then as we're making those kind of relationships and we're beginning to form working relationships probably with other artists, but also with people who aren't artists. And we're learning through those collaborations about who we can work effectively with and who we trust, and what kinds of work can be done effectively in the same, or compatible together in the same space. So that if an opportunity comes up, a great building or something like that, I think that community of artists and other people will be more ready to move and know what to do with that opportunity. And it would also be a lower risk situation because you already have relationships. I mean, the most difficult part of sharing space is other people. So give people a good opportunity to know that they were confident sharing space with people. So we haven't had any kinds of difficulty sharing space with people, but it's office space, and we have a kind of single-use model. But yeah, those are some preliminary thoughts. I have no idea where I'm at, but I bet you'll close.
30 seconds. Thanks, Natalie. Appreciate that. We're going to be probably getting into a lot of it with the questions later on, but one thing I have noticed is this is such a need too for the businesses that are out there. Arts, not only it's pretty well downtown, the central place where a lot of the artists hang out and do business and that, but I'm seeing a lot of facilities that are having difficulty with paying the increased cost of heating and hydro. And if there's a way that, there's a vacant thing here, we can help out with some of those costs. It's certainly something to consider later. But our next speaker, Lorne Hamilton, and Lorne is a member of Kawartha Woodturners Guild and was involved in the formation of Artisans Centre Peterborough, a non-profit organization dedicated to establishing a permanent centre for artisans here in Peterborough. He currently serves as president of Artisans Centre Peterborough and is on the board of EC3. Warren is going to share some insights from his work looking for creative spaces. Lorne.
Thank you, Terry. The introduction says that the Artisan Center Peterborough was formed essentially by a collective of artisan groups to establish a permanent center for artisans in the city. And part of the background of that is that all of the artisan groups in the city have gone through renting space, whether it be from a service club, whether it be from a school. You usually meet once a month. Once you have your meeting, you haul all your equipment in. You do the meeting, you haul the equipment back out. Gives you very little opportunity to use that equipment for teaching members, any of that sort of thing. The other thing that we run into is you're always at the mercy of a landlord. We were tenants in the school workshop for 16 years and we're open 3 months when they changed shop teachers. And we hear this constantly from all the different guilds. So the goal for setting up the Artisan Center Peterborough was a number of them. One was to get some security, so that we weren't always at the mercy of a landlord. Secondly, to be able to do a lot more with the equipment we own. Our guild has 11 lathes and all the tools to go with it. And at least 30 out of 31 days of a month, they are sitting in storage somewhere being unused. The weavers have the same problem. The potters have the same problem. If you look at what the Potters Guild has done in the last 2 years, they moved into the Kingwood Community Center up in Tallwood. A couple of members took a big gamble. They moved up there into a 4,000 square foot space. That space is now available to the potters around the clock, every day of the week. When they did the move, they had 35 members. Some of the members were unhappy, so they lost 8 members. They went down to 27 members. They are currently at 60 members and growing. There are classes running all the time. There's always activity there. They have a large gallery. And they're really kind of the prototype for what we're trying to do. Our concept at this point is to find the funding for a permanent center, and it will consist of dedicated workshops for each of the guilds that need it. We've already defined what those sizes are. In addition, there'll be common areas, meeting room, kitchen, washrooms, gallery. We've had some conversations with Peterborough New Horizons Band and actually redesigned the whole thing based on their input. But the big thing is that we want to be able to use what we have on a regular basis. We can offer a lot more to the community if we have equipment permanently set up so that we can offer classes. Our guild, the Woodturners Guild, we go down and we go to 3 different schools, Lindsay, Bowman, Ville, Coburn. We'll take 10 lathes, 10 turners, and go and work one-on-one with the kids in the shop for a day. Every one of those schools is told if you get a permanent center, we'll just bust the kids up there. And we could look at doing much more extensive things in a 2-hour shop program. We could do much more. Inviting the public in to do more. We could do a lot more with the public, teaching them wood turning, teaching them pottery, weaving, all the rest of it. The other thing we found interesting, we worked with each other, like at the opening of the Potters Guild, we had lathes set up, the weavers were doing some spinning. The first thing we heard, one of our guys was working with a wood that's very red. And the weavers told me that you save all those shavings because we want to use it to make dyes. The potter said, keep the rest of the shavings because we want to use them in our kilns. So what we're really finding is there's a lot to be gained by artisans being exposed to each other and spending time with each other. For the wood turners, we're the largest and best financed of the guilds, but we're pretty internally focused and have been for some time. While we get on the board with these other guilds, we are finding that we have so much to learn from how other guilds operate. And it's been a real education for us. The biggest struggle is locating a space and figuring out how to fund it. We have looked at a number of places. We have looked at some industrial spaces, particularly on Ptbo Road. We have looked at Mount St. Joseph, and we did 2 tours of that and had extensive conversations before we decided we wouldn't do what we needed. Over at IMCA, we were involved in looking at what to do with the old Heritage Building. We were talking with the Canoe Museum on a couple of possibilities. We looked at Woodview School when it first became available. We still haven't found the ideal. We're getting close. I think what helps us is we spend a lot of time defining exactly what we need. We have a pretty good idea. We've even started running models on our operating costs to figure out just what's this going to cost us and how are we going to finance. But until we've identified the space that we can get our hands on, we're kind of at a standstill. We are a nonprofit organization. We are now applying for charitable status. And we just talk to everybody we can. The biggest one is finances. Our feeling is that if we have to borrow the money and pay on a loan, we won't be able to afford the operating costs of the building. So we have to find a way to finance that building that isn't going to tie us down to huge loan payments. We want to be centered on Peterborough, within the bounds of Peterborough. Our members come, in the woodturners, they come from Bancroft, Bobcaygeon, Oshawa, Port Hope, Coburg. So these people are coming a long way, but Peterborough is where we want to be. We don't really want to move away. If we move south of the city, we lose all our members from the north. If we move north, we lose all the ones from the south. One of the hang-ups with all these people coming in is we need parking. We've identified 100 to 150 spaces, what we'd really like to have for parking, and that's free parking, not paid parking. If we could find 75 spaces, we'd probably be happy. We're looking at, we see it as a tourist attraction. If you have a large center like that with a gallery, the other thing we've looked at is taking the workshops, putting picture windows in them, so that people can come in and see what the artists are doing. We can't let the public come into the shop because of insurance. But if we have picture windows, and you'll see this at the Living Arts Center in Mississauga, you'll see it at Harborfront, and you'll see it at places like Tamarack and Beckley, West Virginia. People can stand and see what's going on in that workshop. Has it been done before? Yeah. I've got a list of 30 places in the U.S. coast to coast, and that's only a small sample. If you travel south much, you go through Beckley, West Virginia, I invite you to go to Tamarack and see what they've done. That's a massive facility. Burlington Arts Center in Burlington started with 6 guilds, and is now a 45,000 square foot operation. It's just beautiful, it's a wonderful operation. So it can grow. Every one of those had a different financing. That's really the problem. Every one of them was financed differently, but they all ended up in the same place of providing a place for artisans, to teach. One of the other things we've come across as we've looked at this in terms of space is we're not the only ones. We see a lot of the musicians in the city struggling for space, having a place to practice. Peterborough strikes me as a place that's got a lot of place to show off art and culture. It's a lot harder to find a place to create it. And certainly for the artisans, that's been our biggest struggle, is that we need a place we can leave all our stuff set up and so we can play with it, rather than having to store it away and forget about it. So that's who we are and what we're trying to do. On my own time.
Get 30 seconds.
Can I say hello now?
Let's give a round of applause for our So you can certainly tell, Lorne just in the past year alone has developed an awful lot of experience with trying to find the right space and the challenges involved in that. Thanks, Lorne. Thank you. So our third speaker tonight is Elizabeth Fennell. And Liz is an independent curator committed to creating opportunities for local artists. A graduate of both Trent University and Sir Sandford Fleming College, Fennell is owner-operator of Gallery in the Attic and founder of the Peterborough Darkroom Project. Launched in August 2012, Gallery in the Attic on Hunter Street is a member-supported space for the exhibition of sale of locally made art. In 2013, this work expanded to include a photography community dedicated to reviving the historic Roy Studio darkroom and keeping the history of traditional photographic production alive in Canada's longest continuously operating darkroom. In addition, Liz curates community-based projects with partner organizations like Coin, Hatch, making art happen in unexpected places. Liz is going to talk about the challenges and opportunities afforded by some of those new initiatives and art in unexpected places. Elizabeth.
If I'd known you guys were going to read my bio, I wouldn't have bothered. Sums it up. Okay, so I guess Christy gave us a few questions, and I'm just going to kind of go through what my responses to her questions were, where I had something to say. And Tara, if I'm talking too quietly, give me the Yes, yes, exactly, that. Okay. So I guess my involvement in creative approaches to finding space began really simply. I was looking for a place to show and sell my partner Paul's art and some friends of mine one Christmas, and the only resource we had was the house we were living in. So we got a bunch of people together and said, do you want to put on a show? And they did, and it was so well received that we just sort of kept doing that. And then it sort of became this growing thing that people really liked, and I realized there was this interest in, I don't know, art in untraditional spaces, I guess. So that kind of grew into an Arts Week project, highlighting different Peterborough neighborhoods, and then putting art in a U-Haul and driving the U-Haul around to different neighborhoods. And then eventually, I guess my kind of dream space became available. Somebody I knew was moving out of the historic Forest Studio building, and they've been operating their own studio and gallery space out of it, and I realized it would be a great space for a full-time place to exhibit local art. And there really wasn't, in talking to Natalie, I realized that what I'm doing is basically a social enterprise. It's sort of this business / nonprofit kind of mix that, unlike some of the more professional level galleries like Christensen's and the Russell Gallery formerly, that exhibited a few select artists that they had built relationships with, Gallery in the Attic has a very low barrier to entry in the social enterprise speak. It allows emerging artists to mix with established artists, and we appreciate both sides of that. So it's kind of this nice little community of people who are all passionate about the same thing, and we're willing to share resources with each other to make that thing happen. So it's a member-supported space. There's a few members in the room tonight. If you're a member, put up your hand. If you're a member of Gallery in the Attic. Awesome. So yeah, those are all people who are committed to showing their art locally and helping each other make that happen. So, and now, lately, I'm working with Public Energy to do Airing on the Mount, which is a really exciting 4-day multidisciplinary arts festival. So not only are we putting visual art into the unusual space of performance content, but also performance and music and dance and fun things like that. So I guess some of the challenges of finding space for creative things to happen is finding, and some people have already mentioned that, the sympathetic landlord is really critical. My landlord is Miranda Hume. She owns the building. She acquired it from the Roy family, so she's really invested in the history of the space and preserving it. And so when I approached her about the gallery in the space, and like basically brought her my museum management certificate and said, like, look, I'm not going to ruin it. I'm not going to, like, bring 10 of my friends in and trash the place. And anyway, so she, was sort of developing a relationship of trust with her. And then once we had the space for the gallery, I realized that the dark room was this totally underutilized resource. And so that's sort of another subset of the member-supported things that we do. But Gallery in the Attic will be 2 this September, so I would say that so far it's been a pretty successful exercise. And then in terms of like what makes Ptbo unique, I guess I'll just speak to what makes it unique for me, which is the Roy Studio Archive and the Ptbo, I feel like, is kind of poised to become this great space for photographic inquiry, research, things like Spark Photography Festival, publicizing, promoting local photographers, but also the archival resource that we all collectively share, and we've only just scratched the surface of. So in terms of researchers and people coming to Ptbo to look at that resource and then coming to the dark room to actually see the physical space that those images were created in is really exciting to me. And then, yeah, what does space mean to the creative? I guess for me it's really everything. Like my whole curatorial direction, I was just saying this afternoon, has like been about responding to spaces and filling with interesting things and making people come to them. And as the Artisans know and Natalie knows, like spaces where things can cross-pollinate are really exciting, and that cross-pollination can't happen without those spaces. So, yeah, but we're a town that's kind of rich with some empty spaces, which is a weird thing. Like, we've got all these empty storefronts, but we have all these people who are dying for space, and we can't seem to bring those things together. And I don't really know what the solution is, except more collaboration, more research. Guys, like, the amount of research into your project is incredible. I just like jumped in on a wing and a prayer. I was like, okay, let's see if this works. So far, so good. Yeah, so resource sharing, finding affordable space. I mean, that's part of the reason Gallery in the Attic is where it is because I can afford the space. And I could say to 30 or 40 artists, can you pay like $20 a month for a gallery? Okay, you know, and enough people said they could, so that happened. So I think finding the like-minded people is really the key thing, and getting involved, going out to things that are in your interest area and your passions, and meeting the people who share those passions and missions for spaces. It's that easy and that hard at the same time. And I'm frequently asked about studio spaces for artists. I can't speak to musician rehearsal and dance rehearsal and things like that, but as far as artist studios, I mean, there aren't enough. Like, I know people, just the other day, somebody asked me if I rented out space, and I was like, nope, I don't, sorry. But if they are there, they often are, and if they're affordable, they're in an old rundown building, you know, that's maybe not well maintained, and then you get a rain, and then you use like $20,000 worth of art because the roof leaks. So those are serious concerns for artists. If you're paying to rent a space, and if that space isn't sound, then it's a real risk to your practice. So yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, challenges, summary, that's what I do. That's it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our next speaker, I know an awful lot about because we've hung out for many, many hours going over many, many things at City Hall. Wonderful representative of the arts community, Bill Kimball. We call him the hardest working man in show business. Yeah, that's what Sue wrote.
That's why she's not here.
Since graduating from Trent University in 1980 with a degree in cultural studies, Bill Kimball has been involved in many aspects of the Peterborough arts community, particularly in the areas of contemporary dance and theater. He has made a critical contribution to the creative and live performance spaces in Peterborough, beginning with City Stage, a performance space operated by Art Space in the early 1980s, and continuing to the present with various renovations and improvements to the Market Hall. In 1994, Bill created a nationally recognized dance presenting program called Peterborough New Dance, and later expanded the mandate to theater and other forms of performance under the umbrella of Public Energy. As artistic producer of Public Energy, Bill has led numerous site-specific and alternative artistic projects and been a driving force behind countless creative partnerships and collaborations here in town. Bill will share some of his experiences in developing sites for permanent art and making and presenting enterprises. Bill.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Sue. I'm actually not going to, what does it say? I'm going to share my experience.
It says do whatever you want, Bill, you probably
yeah.
Our notes kind of must have
Yeah, sharing my experiences, yeah, no, I won't do that exactly. But, I don't know, for some reason I kind of want to jump to an area that's one area I've been involved with. One of the things that all these things seem to have in common for me has been an involvement with the political systems, with the government, with the municipalities, with the not so much federal, sometimes provincial, but mostly the municipality. And it's been a long. I'm just looking at the arc of 30 years or whatever it's been. It's been really fascinating if I look at that aspect of it. And people are sort of touching on it. in terms of use of buildings and how to get access to buildings and stuff. And it's one thing that I'd like to talk to more people about, maybe after this or in the question and answer period, because everyone, I mean, I'm just blown away by the people like Liz and people like Ryan Kerr, who was put together a theater space, who are doing it all on their own without any government intervention or help. I mean, it's incredible. It's like they're not waiting, they're not just sitting back. And in my life, I've been going after the government for money. That's been kind of that's been the driving force. So if I can add anything to the mix, it might be in that area, which is not a lot of people want to beat their heads against the wall, but that's what I enjoy doing. Here's an example. I understand the city just lost their arts worker, their arts.
Cultural planner.
Cultural planners. I am impressed. I would like to do a little shout out to one city employee who's here. Thank you for coming out, Eric. Eric's done a lot. Eric's done a lot.
Becky's here.
Becky.
And Becky is actually in charge of the
Arts, culture here.
and
immigration.
and I think, are you chairing the committee?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Dennis covered it.
Dennis. One of the things, I took out a little clipping from the paper the other day, from the Globe and Mail, which was about the new development of the theater center in Toronto. And that's an outfit that's really leveraged a lot of development money to build a new theater complex on Queen Street. And traditionally, we've known about this sort of thing over the years, that one should be able to, get more out of the developers who are working in Peterborough and coming here to do projects like maybe the St. Joseph's Hospital in East City. Although there aren't many, and that's the problem. There aren't really a lot. But we sort of tended to sit back and say, well, we can't really do much about that. What can we do to leverage more at that level? I think with the municipal elections coming up in the fall, we've got a chance to bring the whole issue out, at least visible, make it visible. So that's something I'd like to do in the fall. Well, before the fall, really get that going. We have a history of being active. Some years we do put together arts coalitions or arts vote coalitions, and Sue Ditter will lead that one. I can say that now. She's not here. Yeah, I think we need an ongoing presence to keep that pressure up. I think to be fair to the city folks, they don't maybe have anyone to draw on, like to say, what are the great ideas? What can we do with our spaces? What kind of breaks can we give the landlords for renting those empty spaces? There's got to be more we can do, but we haven't had an ongoing group, and now maybe the EC3 council itself can be that body. That'd be fantastic. It's been lacking for a while. So congratulations. Thanks, Christy, for getting this thing out. Yeah, I mean, if you want to know about renovating theaters in 1980 and stuff and knocking down walls, I can talk about that. Creating little spaces. But that's really that's been on my mind there.
Well, thank you, Bill. Just to have the movie The Wonderful Life moment, put up your hand if you've been moved some way positively by Bill Kimball's existence in our city. See, you are. Don't believe what they wrote about you. Our final speaker tonight, with an overview of what makes for great creative spaces, Planning is Professor Mark Seasons. Mark lives in Peterborough and is a professor with the School of Planning in the Faculty of the Environment at the University of Waterloo. Mark's education includes a PhD in Regional Planning from the University of Waterloo and a master's degree in Environmental Design from the University of Calgary. He's a fellow Canadian Institute of Planners, and he is a registered professional planner. Mark's research interests include downtown revitalization, planning for climate change, and managing slow growth cities. Mark has worked for the National Capital Commission in Ottawa and has been an active participant in the public debates around important spaces in Peterborough, including the closure of PCBS. Everybody put your hands together. Mark Seasons.
Thanks very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. A great pleasure to be part of this community, actually. I really enjoy life in Peterborough. And I want to thank the organizers for putting this program together, because I think it's a really good panel. And I've liked very much the conversation we're having so far, or the presentation so far anyway. I thought, Terry, I'd come up with a couple of quotable quotes from the panel so far, the things that we're hearing, because I am the last in batting order. And then maybe make some observations about that and offer my own perspectives on what's going on too. So lots and lots of good quotable quotes. I mean, it's clearly some strong ones such as, we need suitable, affordable space in which to create. We have a decent amount of space in which to present, but not so much in terms of space to create art and culture. It's a town rich with empty spaces, and that's a paradox, isn't it? Why is that the case? Why aren't we using them? Why can't we use them? There are opportunities to share space. Why do we think creatively about this, about sharing space, more than we have in the past, whether it's talking space or for arts and culture as well? And the need to, I think, be prepared to be more self-sufficient and take grassroots actions instead of relying so much on the public sector or perhaps the private sector when we try to find the resources that are necessary to create spaces and engender creativity in the city. So those are the four of the big themes that I came up with from the panel so far. I have some key points that I want to make, and then I'll get into my discussion if I could. There's lots and lots of potential for arts and culture in Peterborough, and I think as the Municipal Culture Plan pointed out in conversations with people I know in the field, the places, the city of Peterborough is rich in culture and arts, and it's got tremendous capacity. But there's a need to follow through with some of the existing instruments that the city, for example, has at its disposal. The Municipal Culture Plan, which was approved 2 years ago, is a strong plan. It needs to be followed through and implemented. I'm not sure where we are on that. Perhaps the city colleagues could mention where we are in terms of carrying out the policies and objectives and so forth. I noticed, by the way, in that plan, and I could be corrected on this one, I don't see much discussion about creating space for art to happen. Perhaps I'm wrong about that. That seems to be overlooked, and therefore that needs to be addressed, I would suspect. Need to use the tools that are available from municipal government in particular, and I'm talking here about the planning tools, but also the fiscal tools that the city can access to support through financing different types of development, and in particular arts and culture. And then finally, regarding spaces, we have to acknowledge, as I'm sure everyone knows, that different needs of different types of art creation processes and artists will require different types of spaces and therefore different locations for those things to happen throughout the city. So those are my key points. I'll carry on with the mic for a few minutes. Do we have a few minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually put together some thoughts on this. I don't know what happened. I don't know what came over me. Anyway, I thought that I've lived here for several years, and I've been a supporter of the arts, and I go to the events and so forth. I quite enjoy what I see, and I think that if I might just mention that really the arts are a big part of the quality of life in cities like this, especially mid-sized cities like Peterborough. And mid-sized cities are in that 50 to 250,000 range, places that are not the Torontos, but also not just small towns. And the comments that I saw in the plan and in conversations as well, this whole shift to the creative economy that Richard Florida has been talking about for over a decade now. There are lots of pros and cons associated with that theory of creative economy, and he's arguing that if you if you would support the arts and culture, that will attract the creative class. Creative class are kind of the well-educated professional types who tend to have money and will invest in the community and do all kinds of good works. I would caution you, by the way, on that, because one of the criticisms of that whole argument from Richard Florida is that it doesn't do much for those who are unemployed or who have got the kinds of skills that the creative planning works to have. So I wouldn't go whole hog on that. It's touched upon in the creative planning list. It's a multidimensional arts and culture scene that, of course, is well supported, I think, by the community, in my estimation anyway. I think local government, too, to be fair, has done a good job historically of supporting arts and culture. So my sense is that there are already many, many creative people in town, and that trend will accelerate as it becomes more difficult to be an artist or to create culture and art in places like Toronto because of expense, too much hassle, and quality of life. I think if I were looking at how to get things rolling, I would focus on the downtown core. And I would focus on the downtown core and inner city, the neighborhoods around the downtown core, to create that critical mass or focal point for arts and culture to happen. And to a great extent, it already is in place. The trick now is to do something creative and imaginative and innovative with the upper stories of the buildings along George Street, along Water and the other areas around here. You have to keep in mind that planners like me, we like to look 20 to 50 years downstream. We work in the future. So you need to know that as well. In this area, the downtown core in the inner city, it's slated to have 5,000 people in jobs over the next 20 to 30 years, more people in jobs over the next 20 to 30 years, under a provincial plan called the Places to Grow plan. So what you're going to see is a lot more intensification, a lot more density, a lot more mixed use. By mixed use, I mean residential, commercial, and office, and institutional, and spaces. And so if that's going to happen, it seems to be on the books, then there's a great opportunity here for us to push for, advocate for spaces for creativity in terms of arts and culture to be set aside or to be made room for as these projects come online. So I want you to think of more of the kinds of buildings we're seeing, for example, the Elmer and Hunter Street, that new building there, which is a 5-story building. You can see a lot more of that kind of thing happening, and infill in the downtown area in the inner city. A lot more brownfield redevelopment. Brownfield is obsolescent industrial sites. That kind of thing will be developed. You'll see all the vacant parking lots will be taken up with new buildings and things like this. So over the 20 to 30 years, there's quite a change in the urban form of the area. I think that's a good thing. So upper floors and core area buildings, let's see what we can do with those. Elizabeth touched upon that. Enhancing the public realm, the streetscape, urban design is mentioned in the official plan and the core area master plan and the culture plan. One thing I think we could do a lot more on is just touch upon here public art. I mean, urban design is important, but I don't see a whole lot of public art. There could be considerable potential for that. I do like the murals I'm seeing, by the way, on the buildings. I think they're great. I like it a lot. And the whole pedestrian experience, all these things are part of a package. Something else too, I think would be nice, how can we enhance the Trent Fleming presence downtown? You know, if I were doing it again, by the way, if I were the president of Trent 50 years ago, 50 years ago, I would say, let's build a thing downtown by the lake. Is it too late? Revolution. All right. So the challenges are the usual ones you're going to hear. Financial constraints at the local level. There's no money for this. Well, you have to probe about that. Well, what are we spending our money on exactly? And to make the argument that you need to release money from government and other sources in the private sector and people who are philanthropic, you have to make a compelling business case for the arts and culture. Show the multiplier effect, the spin-offs, the cost benefit, all these sorts of bottom line arguments have to be made to those who understand that kind of stuff and think in those terms. So if you're going to advocate on behalf of the arts and culture, it's necessary to be really politically savvy and highly strategic and make a compelling argument in terms of be able to understand. Those are the money, I mean. Fragmented property ownership in downtown as well. You'll be aware of this, Terry. It's a big obstacle in terms of trying to get stuff done. Some landlords are really progressive and great people, others could care less. And you see the kind of spottiness in the quality of the downtown structures. Some are quite wonderful and others just aren't. And so what you do about that, municipality can do things through its maintenance standards, bylaws, and other incentives as well. But it's very difficult. It's an uphill struggle. The culture plan seems slow to be moving from my perspective. I don't know enough about what's happening in terms of implementation. Perhaps I'm completely wrong about this, but I'd look forward to a discussion about how things are moving along in that. It'd be nice to know because it's a good plan. So I would, anyway, just to wrap up, I would clarify the demand for working space, what kinds of needs, who needs it, how much space do we need, where should it be, figure out the inventory of what's available from various sources, private, public, not-for-profit, and then put together an action plan that would take us forward to creating that space that the arts and culture community needs in Peterborough. That's it.
Right on. Thanks, Mark.
You touched on a lot of great subjects there, and that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about ideas, share ideas, and about inhabiting some of these spaces, and trying to get creative. That's why we're here, and that's where we're going to try to throw our questions to this excellent panel. I'd just like to note that one particular item that you mentioned is getting the buy-in with the community, and though it's not, it's not the full look of the downtown, but there is one particular building that the front is very ugly. And just a little example, Eric Hansen was nice enough to give me some wonderful Roy Collection posters. And I, over and over again, tried to convince this person, let's put these in your window, why the property's for sale. I even offered to go clean the window inside out myself. Put the Roy Collection up, and I was turned down. So I, there's a little bit of understanding the challenge. Starting off with a punk band when I was a kid, trying to find a place to play when I was 17 in Peterborough, and some of you might be old enough to remember the Ptbo room. I actually had to book ourselves as a country band, and I think by the third song we were fired. We played Bonanza 3 times. So thank God for the Red Dog later on. Anyway, there's our panel, and just a big round of applause for them.